Hello, this is National Chess Master Rats at chess.com, continuing my video series on the correspondence team match, play between my video lessons group and the team Carpe Diem. This was played on board 1A5 of 210 boards. Our man is Alam Tuzamab versus Tazaza, high 1500 versus low 1400 rating. They split their games. This is the one our man won, and it was certainly a topsy-turvy affair. It could have had any of the three results. A win, loss, draw, as we will see. Black employs the Sicilian defense, and here Black goes in for what they pretty much call the Boleslavsky system. Isaac Boleslavsky was a Russian grandmaster, Soviet grandmaster, came into prominence in the 1940s, and he developed this idea to accept this backward pawn on d6 and have his pawn firmly cemented on e5 and with a lot of central control. And even though it looks bad to give yourself a backward pawn, White can't really exploit it. It's one of the reasons the Sicilian defense is playable. Black's c file is usually worth more than White's d file, but White can get, if both sides castle kingside, White can generally get better kingside attacking chances. And if White castles queenside, it's anybody's game, and that's what we're going to have here. Anyway, knight f3 might be a more flexible place to put the knight, but this is fine. And I'm not sure where book theory ends. But now Black has made his first move pawn moves, and yet he's not far behind in development because White has only developed one piece himself. He's made two moves with his knight. But Black is going to slightly get ahead in development over the next series of moves. And here I think maybe White should just opt for a quiet bishop e2 followed by bishop e3 and castle kingside. And Black will play bishop e7, bishop e6, and strive to try to occupy the c4 square. The knight will go to a4, and that should be Black's plan. And the game is reasonably even. But I think White's trying to make this look like a mainline Najdorf variation where move 6 g5, bishop g5 is played, followed by f4, queen f3, something along that line. And it doesn't quite work out for White. Somebody sending me a friend request. Okay, accept all friends requests. Get that taken care of. Okay, now we have, let's see, bishop e7. Okay, so here's the f4 I was talking about. But White's doing this with intentions of attacking on the king side, and although White looks like he might be setting up an attack on the king side, it never develops, as we will see. It's really interesting. Black develops the piece with tempo. White develops his queen, and might have been better back in this case to have played bishop e2. This way, if Black exchanges, well, yeah, you can do this. You get the queen developed and get yourself castled kingside if you can. Who knows? Maybe Black will play queen b6 to stop it. Although maybe White could take the knight off and drop the knight into d5. I mean, there's all kinds of possibilities here. But it seems to me like Black's going to start to get the better of this ever so slightly, because Black seems to have more flexibility for his pieces. So the plan of queen d2 and h3 I don't think quite works out for White. I can only guess what they're trying to do. h3 makes sense if you're saying I'm going to follow up with g4, maybe bishop takes f6, g5, f5, and get my kingside attack rolling. Yet, as I mentioned earlier, this never happens. Now the bishop goes to a potentially better square, and here Black's threatening to take this knight and give White some double pawns. Why is that important? Well, it's important because the 3 pawns that White has will be neutralized by the 2 pawns. White can't force a pass pawn, but Black would have a majority of pawns on the king side and could eventually force a pass pawn. So Black is slightly better here. And now White castles queen side. Again, his ambition is to attack on the king side, which never comes. But what happens is Black now tactically wins a pawn. First he takes this knight off, and now you have to retake. Now you're capturing away from the center. That's one thing that white should have been on the lookout for. This also opens up a file against your king. So logic might say that black's attack against the white king could be going quicker than the white attack against the black king. Now we have a serious threat here, forking the king and queen. This pawn can't be guarded. The only try is just going to mess things up. Bishop c4 runs into b5, and white has some serious problems. He can't take, because now after takes, the bishop's on the... come on, don't do that to me. Took the move back. Okay. This bishop is on the take, and a rook check is threatened. So, let's see. Bishop d5. Why is it putting it back? Oh, this... Please get version 3 out. It keeps taking moves back. Okay, bishop d5. Let's see. Do I want to check now? And suddenly the white king is very exposed here. Check. Oh, let's see. We want to check there? Yeah. The only safe move to get out of check is going to drop the queen. See, black's attack is just crushing. So, what if you don't open up the file? Try bishop d5 anyway. Let's see. Well, you just take the bishop. And if pawn takes, you're back to knight takes b3 check. So there's all kinds of ways for black to win. So I just showed one of them. Bishop c4 is going to lose. So essentially what white has to do is give up a pawn. And now the queen's under attack. And I really like black here. But white's last move is set up a threat, and black doesn't see it. And now black tries to run his attack, but he's going to drop material as a result of the way he handles it. White takes advantage of the pin. See, when the queen vacated the d file, it set up a pin on this pawn. This pawn is no longer defending on e5. So white takes it. And probably what black should do is meekly retreat. But white should be okay here. If anything, he can take and take and take. And maybe it's still up in the air. White has the bishop, but it's not developed yet. And the white king looks a lot more exposed than the black king. Playing for something along this line would have been much better for black, because black just chooses to jettison a piece to get his attack going. And now white had a happy choice. He could take and push e5 and win a piece, but he just takes it directly. And now he grabs his pawn back. And now white comes up with a perfectly logical move, rook d5, cutting off communication of the queen and the rook. And the queen and the knight, this knight has to be dealt with. So black defends it, activates his rook against the enemy king. White develops his bishop. And here, black is going to make a blunder, and white is going to turn around and potentially throw this whole game away in just a couple of moves after this. It's just an amazing turn of fortune, and then black is in turn going to miss the win that's handed to him. So it's a very topsy-turvy next few moves. Black plays knight c5, and this loses a piece to a simple tactic. Rook takes c5. The rook guards the queen. The rook guards the bishop. The bishop attacks the queen. The queen must move somewhere, or you could play d5 if you really want, but the queen must move somewhere, and this rook will find his way to safety. So you may have heard written in various articles or books about something called chess blindness. And it seems to bite right here, bite white pretty hard. Okay, white's looking at this thing and says, okay, he's attacking my knight, so I need to move my knight or protect it. Well, I can take his knight. I can play knight takes knight, okay? And that knight on it, c5, is guarding the pawn on a6. So after he retakes, I can take his pawn on a6. Well, there's a flaw in that. And the chess blindness is that white sees that when this knight disappears, the defender of a6 is gone. That's true, but when black takes back, a new defender arises, and there's the chess blindness. We don't see the a6 being protected now because it isn't by the queen on e6 because it isn't. But the change in the position makes it makes a defender appear, and then we totally miss it. Now, if this happened to you, don't worry about it. It's happened to grandmasters. They just don't see that a square that's safe suddenly doesn't become safe. How can you prevent something like this? Well, you slow down. You double check, and especially if you're caught in a variation, and even if you're, because white does go into this variation, but he has a chance to correct it. So when white played knight takes knight, rook takes wins. When white plays knight takes on c5, my thinking is, white wants to win the pawn on c5, and missing the fact that he's taken the wrong way. He could have been taking on c5 with his rook, so white's going after the c pawn, and I'm fully expecting white to play rook takes c5. Okay? What he does is he plays bishop takes a6, which is a blunder. And now the outcome of the game is totally in doubt. Look at white's attack on the king side. It's still not there. Look at black's attack on the queen side. Well, there's two open files, and thanks to white's next howler, there's going to be a third one. What should white do here? Well, offering a draw wouldn't be a bad idea. Maybe you can play rook takes, although black is still better because has plenty of compensation because he's got all these open files. Maybe get this rook into play somehow. White's got to do something here, but he makes a horrible blunder, and black returns the favor. Now black has a winning game. Black has the right idea, but he didn't do it right. Okay, what's in play here for both sides? A queen and a rook. That's what's in play. You want all your pieces in play. Well, you're both running out of them. This is all that's left for black, the rook on f8. This is all that's left for white, the rook on f1. If black moved this rook to c8, he would have a completely winning game. And let me illustrate why. Where's white going to put his queen? Okay, let's try a5. Well, now the winning move is queen c4. Queen e2 works, by the way, also. The threat is queen c2 check. Okay, how can white deal with that? Well, let's look at a couple possibilities. First off, let's try to set up a back rank threat. The idea being, after this check, if black goes to win the queen, white gets a checkmate. But black has a much better move than winning the queen. How about winning the king? Kind of funny, huh? Okay, so the rook move fails. We got to guard c2. So we tried to guard it with a counter threat. Let's try putting the rook back here. Well, now the problem is rook a8 directly. And this queen's in trouble. Where are you going to put it? Well, let's put it on c3. Well, here comes a check. And after a move like here, the queen is falling. So queen a5 doesn't work. Can white try anything else? Let's see. Get the right position. Let's bring the queen back to f2. This guards that c2 square. Well, the problem here is just simply rook a8. And this mate threat is pretty, well, come on, arrow. This mate threat is pretty difficult to deal with. Let's see, rook c5. How about just rook check, king up, and queen takes rook if you can't find anything better. So black had a completely winning game. But he lets white off the hook by not developing that other rook. He plays queen a2. Now that threatens mate 2, but it gives white chance to a chance to regroup. Now here, probably what black's best bet is to bring the queen back to a6 and keep the threats alive. You're threatening this rook check again. I mean, the rook c8. You're threatening to move, go through some of these plans. Instead, black opts to take the queen. Now, we reach a double rook ending. Now, white's missed his win. Black has missed his win. With correct play, this should be a draw, but it's white that gets to have the fun because white's a pawn up. And actually, this game deteriorates rather quickly for black, and we'll try to find a strategy for him. Now he finds the right move, but too late after the queens are off the board. And so now the question is, how do you draw a game like this? Well, if you're going to be down a pawn and ending, you want it to be rook and pawn endings, because if you get your rook activated, you can usually secure the draw. That's a whole long story, but you want your rooks behind the pawns. The white pawns are kind of weak here. G2 kind of, if you can get on the 7th rank. But the objective should be, to draw this game, should be something like rook c4. Okay? You're trying to get the rooks active. Because it is black's move, and both his rooks are developed. White's h1 rook is still there. His kingside attack never came and isn't. So rook c4 is a nice active move. If white pushes the pawn, there's nothing making him push the pawn. That pawn becomes a target. Okay, first tempo this pawn, force this back, and now come over here. Okay, now this pawn's a target again. Well, if you come back, black has a lot of happy choices here. You can repeat the position and just call it a draw, or you can do something like take the 7th rank and maybe think about playing for a win. Now this b2 pawn is going to fall, and the g2 pawn is weak, and the e5 pawn is weak. So maybe although it'd still probably be a draw, it's black that gets to have fun making white try to earn it. So instead of activating his rook further, you see he'd activated it when he put it on c8. I'm trying to find the right position here. Back up. Okay. Instead of activating his rook further and pressuring the white pawns, he plays g6. Now this gives white a chance to bring his other rook into play, and he does. And now black finds the correct move, but a move too late. And now white's doubled on the file, and things change. See, white couldn't play that move before, but now he can. That's a critical difference. That's why you always want, pieces, not pawns. White wasn't threatening a back rank mate, right? The only way white gets a back rank mate is if both black rooks vacate the 8th rank, or his 1st rank, or one of them vacates and white gets doubled, and then back rank mates. So there is no back rank mate here yet. There was no need to play g6. Okay, on rook b4, maybe if he doubles here, threatening a back rank, you say, oh my goodness, he's going to back rank mate me, now I'll play g6. Well, that's a mistake. You have the power of the x-ray to save you. A lot of people say, oh, look, you're mating. No, you're not. You are if you go this way, duh. You use the x-ray, rook check, rook back. Now the rooks guard each other. And the rook on c8 is guarding the rook on e8, and this should be a simple draw. Okay? So there was no need to rush to prevent something white wasn't even threatening yet. Activate your rook. Now, gradually what's going to happen is white's going to be improving his position, and black's going to miss his draw. Oh wait, that's not the position. I hate this chess.com interface. It replaces main lines with a variation you look at, and you have to dig through all the nested variations off to the side to find the real line. Oh well, it does have some advantages sometime. But now, like I say, now he finds the right move, or one of the right moves, and now white's able to get a set of rooks off. Well, hit the wrong button. And it still should be a draw, but black has to be more careful than he did before, because he no longer has two rooks to menace those pawns. So here he makes his rook passive. This wasn't wise. It's true he's tying the rook down, but this just gives white time to activate his king and his queenside pass pawn. And now black makes another mistake. He allows his pawns to be isolated. Now this pawn is a potential target. And now white makes a mistake. He lets black eliminate his weak pawn. So with correct play, it should still be a draw. But what black needs to do is get his rook on the back rank right now. Okay? That's the drawing method. Instead, he starts to activate his king. Now, one thing you would think if he plays f5, he'd want the king to come into play on this diagonal. He doesn't. See, putting it on play on this diagonal helps keep an eye on the pawn on b4. Instead, he decides to go up to g5 with his king. While he's busy doing that, white's gaining ground. And see, now suddenly this pawn is very, very dangerous. And at this point, black may very well be in serious difficulties. It's the last chance to get the rook to the back rank where it'll do some good. Instead, black chooses the incorrect defense and ends up with a very passive rook, and the game turns into a win for white very quickly. But the only defense is rook c8, although white does have the upper hand. We'll come back. Let's see, move 37. We'll come back to this, and we'll talk about it just a little bit at the end. Okay, king b5. And see, that rook is just being chased, and the pawn is advancing. Now here, black should have maybe at least thought about getting rid of that pawn. Wasn't that one of the ideas of putting the king to g5 is to help get rid of pawns? Well, didn't happen, and now he does it, but a move late, but it doesn't really matter. White's winning. That pawn is just too dangerous, and it can't be stopped. Now, if rook check, you just block with the rook. So now the pawn queens, and black plays a few more moves and then gives up in a clearly lost game. So we want to go back to move 37. At black's last chance to hold this, move 37. He played rook c8 check. Now, I think black still has to work for his draw. But, see, what black's doing here is activating the rook. Now, the biggest disadvantage black has is look at his king position. It's far removed from the action. Although there are some positions where when the pawns on the king side come off, black can still draw. But it depends. It depends on a lot of things. And, you can find the rules for rook and pawn endings by Smyslov and Averbach. All the rules are laid down there, what wins and what draws. But you have to have an active defense, and we'll just, for the fun of it, try just a little bit here. Let's try to play for a win for white. Okay, b5 has to come at some point. So let's go ahead and get this pawn off the board. See if we can do it. Okay. Now I'm going to cut the king off. Okay, now the black king is cut off. So we're down to a duel with this rook versus this king and pawn. It's black to play. Let's try a check. I think this is a win for white. Yeah, this should be a win for white. The king is too far. Okay, just getting down to a key point. And now white builds a bridge. And let's see. The bridge is more or less built. Usually the bridge is built somewhere. When the king comes here and the black rook is checking, and you on the file and you block it with the rook. But here you've cut it off. So it was probably a loss for black when it had moved 37. I didn't find a defense, but I just played one line. But rook c8 is the only active move, and it comes back a little earlier when he opted for rook e8. Rook e8 wasn't a good choice. Uh, Trading rooks was not a good choice. Uh, should have kept the rooks on the board. Okay, rook g3. If white goes back, you go back. Okay. If king c2, no, you can't play king c2. Uh, what's white going to do? Let's go take the seventh rank. Well, let's go bother you on that seventh rank. Okay. Now you force this rook back here. Uh, now let's go back to this plan over here again. Let's go bother your e pawn. Okay. Uh, and this is probably going to run into trouble. Well, maybe not. Let's see. Trying to get this in. Let's see. Well, we can always do this. And if rook down here, just start checking. Now, if you come over here, I'm pretty sure black's okay. And black should be okay here as well. If anything, just play rook f2, and I think black has a easy draw and the better of it now that this pawn is isolated. So black needed to keep the rooks on. But, that's what endgame books are for. You're allowed to look up endgames, okay? It's something in the rules. The series I have, I call it the Averbach series. It's an 8-volume set. It was translated from Russian back in the 70s, and it's an English descriptive notation, which if you don't know, you need to know. It was reprinted in the 80s by Pergamon. I think those are out of print, but if you look hard enough, you could find it. And they combine volumes, but it's an 8-volume set. All but one were written or co-authored by Yuri Averbach, Soviet Grandmaster of the 60s, back in Fischer's era. What the Russians tried to do was they tried to come up with a general rule for every potential endgame of one piece versus one piece, and sometimes one piece versus no piece. The 8 volumes are divided into pawn endings, there's no pieces, knight endings, bishop versus knight endings, rook endings, queen versus rook or minor piece endings, and rook versus minor piece endings. There's your 8 volumes. And they, like I said, they tried to come up with every conceivable type of position. I mean, or a general rule. Now you won't, if you're looking up your position in the book, chances are you won't find it, but you'll find something close. They'll give you the rules of what to do. Like you're in a bishop ending, a pawn ahead. What do you do? You're bishop ending, opposite colored bishops a pawn ahead. What do you do? Knight and pawn ending. Positional advantage. Better knight versus worse knight. What do you do? So forth and so forth. They pretty much have a rule for every possibility. They start with a fewer number of pawns and then start adding them. And eventually, some of the more complicated ones with more pawns, you find a way to trade down to a position that's known to be won. And it's made up of actual game examples and composed studies. They used to compose a lot of endgame problems, 1870, 1920. I mean, they still do today, but they used to compose a lot of with few pieces on the board to prove what would happen. And the Russians were very good at this. They put this Averbach series together to give a general rule for everything to do. And our players that went off to the interzonal tournaments representing America, they took these books with them so they would have access to them during the adjournments. And correspondence chess is an adjournment every move. Why wouldn't you want to look up an endgame? Okay, you learn the end. That's the way my video lessons program shows. This is the way to learn the endgame. You get the endgame, you find the book, and you learn it. Anyway. Just one game in nearly 30-minute video, but I never know. It just depends on what comes up in a game and what instructional value can I pass along to you. And there was a lot here, and I think one of the keys is there's a lot of the keys here. One is the blind spot, the attacking on both sides of the board. Hanging pieces. Both sides were hanging pieces like crazy. White hung his bishop on a6. Black hung his knight on c5. White didn't take it. Black allowed a piece to be taken rather than step into a fork. White butchered a pawn in the opening. I don't know where book ended, but by using book, White could have done better with this position. Why didn't you use database? Did you know that's allowed? Why don't you have books on this? Everybody used to have books when I grew up. Now they have databases. It's all computerized. Do you have one? It's a lot cheaper than buying hundreds of chess books, and then all the information is readily available. Anyway, thanks so much for following this series. I'll be back soon with another.